Rev up your engines!
Now, I can't help but laugh at this. J.D. Power says Stellantis is killing it with customer satisfaction and that they're top of the list with Chrysler in the United States and Ram, right? Now, this is what they call initial quality, right? What a baloney survey that is. It's in with the first 90 days of ownership. They're saying Chrysler and Ram are killing it. They're the top of all the ones in the United States. What a load of horse manure. If you know, J.D. Powers is a PR firm, you know, and they claim it's independent surveys and stuff. That's a bunch of hoo-ha, too. I have had customers who bought vehicles and they got called on the line by J.D. Powers to be interviewed. And when they started saying bad things about Chryslers, they said they hung up the phone. They didn't even finish the interview. That stuff is such a load of baloney. And to top it all off, initial quality, the first 90 days, okay, people have had them for 4 or 5 years, what they think of the quality, you know? If I spend 50, 60 grand on a vehicle, I expect it to last more than 90 days, you know? Absolute baloney. And they claim they're independent. I can imagine the money that's changing hands from one company to the other for advertising. J.D. Powers is a PR firm. It's a public relations firm. Basically an advertising agency. Who would believe a word these people say about anything? And of course, Stellantis just started up. It's the merger of Peugeot, Fiat, and Chrysler, right? Don't think they're not shelling money out like no tomorrow to try to get good PR stuff going out. I just can't believe that anybody would listen to a word that J.D. Power says about anything. Yeah? It's a public relations firm after all. Unfortunately, I'm sure that some people believe it. They go out and buy one, and then 3, 4 years later, they're like, oh man, this is a pile of junk. But then, of course, J.D. Power's come back. Well, remember, this was initial quality, the first 90 days. You've owned it for a year or 2 and 3, so it's falling apart now. We can't help that. They said the initial quality was good. Palencia says, thoughts on a Mazda CX-5 2021. Mazda used to have a lot of problems with transmissions. In conjunction with, they'd have Jatco transmissions. Then they had a deal where Mazda was having a lot of Ford parts on them and they had problems. But recently, Mazda and Toyota have a big cooperation going on. They got a factory in Alabama where they're building Mazdas and Toyotas on the same assembly line. I would have no qualms about a CX-5 2021. Now, me, I'd never buy a new car. I'm too cheap. Any car you buy, including a Toyota, you buy it, it loses a lot of value the minute you drive it off the lot. You get a 5 to 8 year old Toyota that's really well made, you can pay maybe 30% of what the new price was, and it might still have 80% of its value left. It might last more than it already has, and you're only paying 30% of the price. Or in my case, 10% of the price, and it lasts as 80%. Like my wife's Lexus that I paid $3,000 for, which was less than 10% of the original price. Had 65,000 miles. I see those go 300,000-400,000 miles, so that was a real deal. I never buy a new vehicle, but if you're looking at new vehicles, that can be a very good vehicle. Well, the mama says, I hate using used parts. It's too risky. I tend to agree with you in many situations, but there's the contrarian philosophy, which is every car out there is driving on used parts, of course, you know. As soon as you buy a new car, the parts you use, and you know, you've got a car that's 8 years old, it's got a lot of used parts on it, so... But yeah, I'm not a fan because generally cars break in a pattern. Yeah, if you got a Ford and they're notorious for the water pumps going out, are you going to buy a used water pump? No, it'd be a stupid idea, right? Wouldn't make any sense. Now, if you're buying a door or something like that, you see it, there's nothing wrong with that. Wheels, things like that. But yeah, anything that moves or electronic parts, I'm not a big fan of buying used car parts either. It used to be you could save a whole bunch of money in junkyards, but since the Chinese have come along, they make new parts and they sell them a lot less than junkyard parts, and that kind of knocked the junkyard guys' businesses out because you can get a new part half the price of what they're selling a used one for, and most people are going to buy a new part. Dark Vortex Game, it says, what do you think of a 1981 Camaro Z28? Okay, those are popular vehicles. The Z28s are tremendous gas hogs if you don't mind spending a lot of money on gasoline. And realize they're also becoming highly collectible. You know, when I was younger, in the 60s, all the 60s ones got collectible. They all got bought off. They got too expensive. People got older and don't buy them. The younger people, not real young, it's an 81, but younger than somebody from the 60s, somebody from the 80s, right? They remember when they were young and they want to buy one. So the values of those are going up. And so if it's in good shape and you buy one, you're not going to lose as long as you don't wrap it around a tree or flip it in a ditch, because they are worth money. You know, they got big Chevy V8s. You can get engines, transmissions all over the place. Modify them all you want. And if you don't mind bad gas mileage, you want to have some fun, go right ahead, because they are becoming collector's items if you take care of them. And then you're tired of that toy, somebody's going to buy it from you for good money. What are your thoughts on a Chevy Equinox. I was personally happy with a lot of them because they broke all the time and I was a mechanic, right? Fixing people's cars. I tell people that had them, I even say, get rid of this thing. It's falling apart. I could make a lot of money fixing it the next 3 years. Get a better vehicle. Get rid of it, Because all my customers that had those things, they all fell apart for them. Some of them broke down with 60, 70,000 miles. Generally, every single one I've ever seen, I'd never seen an automatic transmission in one of those go more than maybe 130,000 miles before it fell apart. The quality's just not there. And the price is certainly there. They're charging a ton for them, but the quality's not there. I would not buy one. And all of my customers, to a man and woman who bought one, told me they would never buy another one when I got rid of it. Enrique Maldonado says, my '09 Acura TXS burns oil. What can I do? Well, make sure you change your oil regularly. First, change your PCV valve. If your PCV valve is stuck open, it will suck oil into the engine and burn it. That's supposed to keep oil out of the intake and just take vapor. So the vapor passes through, but when oil comes, the oil clunk hits the valves, shuts it so the oil doesn't get sucked into the engine. That's how they work. But if it's stuck open, it's not going to close and the oil will get sucked in. I have just been trying out a new product. You can look at the website, ATS Test Solutions. They're really interesting guys. They spent 8 years and $1 million developing a new cleaner for engine oil. And they showed me with some of their data that they did it at the Sandia National Laboratory in Los Alamos. One of the guys works there, I guess. That sometimes the oil control rings, since modern cars don't have real tight ones, like when I was young, where when you put a piston in the engine and took it apart, you had to hit it with a hammer and a block of wood to get it in. Those are high tension rings. The new ones have low tension rings for less friction and better gas mileage, and that's all that stuff the government wants. You can rebuild one of those. You can hold them with your fingers, the rings, and push it with your hand. You don't need a hammer. But they can stick inside the engine. And these guys, this oil cleaner, it's like $20 for a bottle of this stuff. I tried it out on a guy's Volkswagen, and it amazed me. You pour it in, you run it for like 15, 20 minutes at a high idle, like 2,000 RPMs, shut it off, change the oil filter, put in new oil, and drive it around. It gets rid of the carbon that's making the rings stick in and not sealing. Give it a try. Now if that doesn't work, it's just that, you either got bad valve seals or bad piston rings if they're totally worn out. But they can carbon up, and that stuff, I find it kind of amazing. These guys worked on it for 8 years, spent $1 million researching it, so figuring out what carbon is actually in the engine, what chemicals, hundreds of different chemical compositions. None of that PEA, amine cleaner. It's completely different base. I'm amazed by the stuff. You might want to give it a try. They sell it online, I believe. You're not going to find any auto parts stores. They're a real small operation in Albuquerque, but they do sell it online. And hey, I'm kind of amazed by the stuff. If it can clean the carbon off and now the rings seal better and then you get no oil burning, I'm all for stuff like that. Well, here's something you don't know. A lot of those little planes you see flying around the sky, they use leaded fuel. In the United States, there's over 170,000 lead-burning planes. Now, why is that allowed? Why can they have lead in fuel? Airplanes go at top speed. Lead lubricates the valves and also raises the octane level. And those engines were made to run that way. You can't run them on unleaded gas. They wouldn't last long. They'd overheat. The valves would wear out. Recently, the last country in the world that allowed leaded gas made it illegal. That was Algeria. Now, no countries in the world are allowed to sell it for cars. But we got 170,000 planes in the United States flying on leaded gasoline. It turns out that piston-based airplanes in the United States are one of the largest contributors of lead in the air. So they make the most airborne lead of anything. Got 170,000 of them flying around, burning lead in the gasoline like the cars used to because of the engine design. And they stop the engine knock. You don't want to knock an engine when you're flying through the air. Boom, there goes the engine if it breaks. Now, this is all based on avgas. Now, in North America, it has a maximum lead content of 0.56 grams per liter. Close enough to what they used to put in the cars. And of course, when they started to phase it out, like in 1986, it was 0.03 grams per liter for the cars. They started to put less lead in. Then it was phased out in 1996 in the United States. Now, of course, the planes we all fly around with in commercial jets, those are using diesel, basically, aviation diesel, kerosene. They don't put lead in that. They're completely different. They don't have valves. Those are turbine engines that spin. Completely different design. But all those little piston planes you see flying around, they're burning leaded gas and throwing the lead in our air. So, maybe not such a great idea. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.